Welcome to OverBoost 25. OverBoost is a podcast interview series featuring discussions with speedrunners about their history in speedrunning and gaming and the runs they're passionate about. I am your host, PMC Trilogy, and with me today is Catalystz. Catalystz, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for the invite. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm delighted. From one FromSoft runner to another. I'm really excited to have this. I like to start these off with some current events, and I think I first, if you want the history of how did I first see Catalystz on Twitch? The first time I remember seeing your name on Twitch was actually one day when you raided KZ Fru. You came in with the raided KZ Fru. Saw it. I was like, who is this? And I checked out your channel. At some point I followed you, and I noticed that in the past month or two, you have been going ham on improving your times in Dark Souls. And I know we're going to talk about how you got into running Dark Souls and playing Dark Souls, but I wanted to ask what prompted you to make this effort?
Well, recently, basically, it's because of pretty much the pandemic. Like, we're back to where we started. I had exams in about June. I was right about then. I was done with the exams. Or I guess early July actually, because everything was delayed a little bit. So I wasn't going as ham as you called it before, because I had to prepare and stuff like that. And even though I was able to combine because of remote education, like both exams and streaming, it wasn't really the same. And at the same time, I was also like stuck in the all bosses category in the phase where basically I was just mindlessly grinding and it wasn't really giving me any results. So it was a very much needed break. When I went home from college, and I didn't stream for about 14 days, and I was like, all right, let's get it now. I'm ready. And I switched 20% because I had to, I PB'd on the first day back in all bosses by a little bit, and then I switched 20% because of ESA Summer Online. And I was like, it would be a shame to de-rust the category and then not do a couple of runs. And then I figured out that the run could go sub 30 minutes, and I was like, well, it's, if there's anyone that has to do it, it has to be me. So that's pretty much where that started from.
No, I mean that makes sense. I mean, I said it before we went live with the podcast recording, but it's everyone's, I think, found ways to cope, and it's a silver lining, right? That we're able to do these projects because we have this time. Of course, there's other things that we'd love to do too. Let's go back to a simpler time though. Where does video gaming start for you? Where does that come from in your life?
Well, it comes from my dad. He's a electrical engineering master's degree person, and
put my finger right on my nose when you said that. I definitely don't have any of those.
Well, me neither so far. So, but yeah, so he was really into just like technology, and obviously, like in the early 90s is when like more consoles and more things were getting here, because I'm from the Czech Republic, so we were in the Soviet bloc, so a lot of the import from either Japan or the West, the US, wasn't really here, and he somehow got into it. And I even remember back before the Iron Curtain fell, he I think it was my grandma who told me the story how he managed to smuggle like an old Amiga from the DDR. So basically, it was thanks to him, because when I was about 4 years old, he gave me a computer. Like, I was living with my mom at that time, and he got us a computer. And then the same year, he also purchased the PlayStation 2, which was a brand new console back in 2001. And that's pretty much how I got into gaming. So little cat, I was playing Tomb Raider 1. That's the first game I ever played. And I remember when I like obviously didn't. My mom wasn't literate with computers, and I was very, very young, very small. So I remember just having like little pieces of paper that basically said like how to save the game, directly like input by input. So it's like press escape, down arrow twice, then enter, left arrow, enter, and that saved the game, and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of how I got going, and I've just really enjoyed it since.
No, that's really cool. Something I say often, especially when it comes to gaming or even other things like anime, for example. Access does so much to shape taste. Certainly the more the more I talk about it with people, and especially when I get opportunities to interview people who are from not the U.S. or maybe I've had so many UK guests on this show for some reason, so maybe not UK as well. The thing I notice is that exactly what you're saying is that things like the Iron Curtain and stuff like that shaped what access you were able to have with getting gaming stuff. So you mentioned the PS2 Tomb Raider stuff was early on big for you. Was there a point where you kind of took ownership from it? Because I feel like this is common to hear that maybe early on you got a gift or something from a parent that was one of the consoles. Is there a point where maybe you saved up money, or even later on when you would have been old enough to work, where you bought a console yourself and really took ownership of your gaming hobby?
Not really. I mean, I guess the only time is because I basically I'm only 23 still, so
Okay.
I haven't had that much working experience. But I would say at one point, like all the pocket money and stuff that you get, I started saving up some stuff, and I wanted a better computer at some point. And even though it was not just like from my money, it was from obviously my mom gave me a little bit, my dad gave me a little bit, and we got myself a PC at some point. That was a pre-build actually. I remember the specs at all. I just remember that I had to it had integrated graphics only, so I remember I had to buy like a dedicated GPU pretty much instantly afterwards. It had 1 gigabyte of RAM. I remember that.
Good.
And that was like my PC where I could do anything I wanted to on that. And I learned how to install stuff and what software to get and that kind of stuff. Because everything before that, my dad just set up. And when it comes to the PlayStation 2, so I was in a weird situation when I was a kid because my parents split up, even though they're on good terms and have been ever since. So I'm fortunate in that sense. But I would basically spend the week when I was going to school at my grandma's. And at my grandma's, I had the PS2, so I just played on it the whole week. Then I went to my mom's over the weekend, and I just played on the computer that I had there. So pretty much I had, in terms of ownership, it was basically mine. No one else was playing on my stuff. But I didn't buy it for my own money or anything like that.
Now, over the years, have you mostly focused? Because I'm assuming that for the most part, a lot of your runs are being done on PC. Have you had a lot of consoles over the years?
Not really, actually. I basically just had the PS2. I had a PS1 for a little bit, but I don't really even remember when that got. I think my dad just sold it because I didn't really play on it anymore. And well, funnily enough, there were actually in the end 3 PS2s because my dad wanted one as well. So he had the slim one. I had the default black one, which in the end, I don't know how this happened. I don't really remember, but that ended up at my mom's place. And then there was another one that's still here. That's at my grandma's. That's the silver PS2. So in the end, we owned 3 PlayStation 2s. And I went through that basically until 2013, where we finally decided with my dad it was time to buy the PS3, and it was actually in the last year of the console cycle. So I was like, yeah, well, played on it for a year, and then we bought the PS4 when it came out. So in terms of consoles, that's pretty much the entire story. That's why I don't really have any close relationship to the popular speed games like Mario or Zelda, because I've never owned those consoles and I never got to play those games.
Yeah, PlayStation speedrunning is is its own adventure. I mean, I don't think you've done too many PS2 speedruns, so we can't have the whole grief conversation about 90Ks, but you're probably aware of that, right?
Yeah, I heard a thing or two about it, yeah.
All right. Well, so besides that too, we're going to be talking about speedruns. We're going to be talking about games that are primarily I mean, we're going to be talking about Dark Souls, which has a multiplayer component, but we're going to be talking primarily about single player. Over the years, have you had any phases of multiplayer gaming, whether that be a League of Legends, Hearthstone, things like that?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty long story.
We're here. This is a podcast.
Yeah. I'm a pretty avid gamer. Pretty much any class or group of people that I was in, I was always the most hardcore gamer. So as soon as I got a proper wired connection, not the kinds where you had to pay for the like data that was transferred, I immediately started with Call of Duty 1 back in like 2004 or 5. And I was like instantly hooked, basically. I was absolutely terrible, obviously. But Call of Duty was something that I played for many years and spent probably over like 13,000 hours on it. And pretty much since then, like as soon as I got this kind of a connection and I could play those, Counter-Strikes and the Call of Duties and stuff, I pretty much became like an online gamer primarily, even though I liked single player games and I played on the console still because I was still switching between my mom's and my grandma's place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I basically just went ham on Call of Duty 2 when it came out in 2006 and played it a lot until like 2011, even though Call of Duty 4 was out and that kind of took over with pro mode and everything. I still really liked that game and I was much better at it. I even like went to some European LANs and stuff. So
LAN
I just
parties.
couldn't let go.
I love talking about LAN parties. Very good.
Those
Very
were
good.
Good old times, yes. So I went through that and then I just become like very competitive in terms of gaming. So when Call of Duty died down, StarCraft 2 came out. So I played StarCraft a lot. I was a Grandmaster on the European servers. Played for like one of the, well, I guess the best Czech team, but I mean, it was still a Czech team, so we were a bunch of memers in the end. And then I picked up League even before StarCraft, but I didn't really like focus on it or anything. And this is a little bit intertwined with speedrunning already, but
Sure.
I didn't really know what to do. So I was speedrunning for a while, and then I was like, I kind of want to like push League as much as I can. So I went on the grind, and for like the entire summer of 2016, I was just playing like 7, 8, 9 hours a day. I ended up getting to Masters, and I even had a Challenger Series team tryout at one point, but that didn't go well, unfortunately. And I kind of lost my motivation from there on out, and I just like quit League. And I went back to speedrunning, and that's pretty much what I've done since.
Well, let's talk about speedrunning then. How did you first learn about speedrunning?
So that's a very common story that you've probably heard on the podcast before. That I saw GDQ on Justin TV.
That's the number one answer.
Yeah. Like I was aware of the live streaming platforms because of StarCraft and because of League, like on.tv and Justin. And I saw Mike Uyama's Prince of Persia Sands of Time run in 2012. And Sands of Time is like one of my favorite games of all time. Prince of Persia definitely one of my favorite series. And I watched what he was doing, and I was like, this is super cool. And I wasn't like one of those YouTube commenters that say, wow, glitches are cheating. I was like, this is so cool. I want to try the same thing. Like, how did I not think of this? Or how is like, this looks so easy to do. Is it really that easy? So I booted up my PS2, and I pretty much right after that run, I was so curious, and I tried some tricks and stuff like that. And that's pretty much like when I got into speedrunning. Yeah, I didn't have any means to capture my runs or anything, but I started like trying strats. I started timing my playthroughs and stuff like that. And it was a really on and off thing for me. And then the spark got kind of reignited in 2013 when I saw, again, GDQ, I saw Molotov's Metal Gear Solid 3 run. Metal Gear Solid, probably like my favorite series of all time. So I was like, okay, well, I got to do this now that I have the PS3. So I started like recording some segmented stuff and playing around with that. But I didn't really get into speedrunning for real, like streaming runs and actually submitting stuff and taking part in the discussions until 2015. So much later than the first time I had seen speedrunning. And it's connected to GDQ again because I always loved watching it. I watched GDQ a lot. And I remember after AGDQ 2015, I was browsing the speedrunning, the speedrun subreddit, and I saw Enikos or Enijo or now Joe. He posted a thread with like the new Prince of Persia Sands of Time record. And back in the days in 2012 when I was running, it was like 142. And now he posted a time of like 113. I was like, what happened with that game? And I just got hooked. I started watching like I looked up the leaderboard. I started following the people that ran the game. I started hanging out in the streams, and then that was that pretty much. I was like, okay, well, it's time to go back to Sands of Time.
Cool. So and at that point, you would have been playing the. There's a PC version of that game, right? Am I?
Yeah, yes, there's a PC version.
So at that point,
yeah.
I was just going to follow up because obviously when you started doing it on PS2, as you mentioned, you didn't really have a capture card. Certainly trying at that point. I guess that you would have been. That would have been like you said, like 2012, right? That would have when the Mike Yama run would have been. Because at that point, it's like way harder, I think, to stream. I mean, the rise of OBS and all the other utilities has really done so much to, enable people to capture their runs and share them and everything. And so, but you came back to it. You're doing the PC run. When did you sort of make an effort to really, so you said you're getting involved. You're doing the runs and you're streaming them and you're sharing them.
Correct.
When do you feel like you started really putting time into your stream as sort of an entity, getting towards, partner and things like that?
Oh, that's actually much later because, like I said, I had that phase in 2016 where I played League, so I kind of burned out on speedrunning. So I guess I'll take it just step by step if you don't mind.
Yep, do it.
So 2015, I was like early February or something. I started doing some sense of time. I think on like the third run, I got the record because I had some like previous experience. No, I mean the record wasn't great. And I got really lucky with one of the skips that's like really difficult. I think the record hit like fourth try, and I somehow hit it first try, right? And like, well, the problem is that I wasn't recording. I don't really remember what exactly happened if I wasn't recording at that time because I was just learning, or if I messed up my keybinds or something. But I remember I had the timer on screen because I didn't have two monitors. So I had just a phone like in front of my monitor with a timer, so a stopwatch. And then when I got it first try and I saw that this could be record, I was like so nervous. And it's really funny to me to think back because at this point I've become like much calmer even in these high pressure situations. But yeah, in the end, it took like probably another week, I think. The next weekend, I got the record for real. This time with a recording, and it was really all I care about because I was like, I was in high school and I just cared about having fun with the guys and having fun with the speedruns and just trying to like push the game as low as it could possibly go. And I pretty much did that all throughout 2015. I also picked up the second game and the third game in the Sans trilogy. That's Warrior Within and Two Thrones. And then I remember in December 2015, I also picked up Mirror's Edge because I got to know Mr. Walrus, who was running Warrior Within at one point, and he was running Medj as well, like Grey Guy. And I picked it up from him. He had a great tutorial, and I pretty much like was messing around with Medj since then. And then I pretty much kept on doing like the same thing, just grinding Prince of Persia until summer 2016, where I graduated from high school, and I don't know, I wasn't really having fun with the runs anymore. Like it was a bit too grindy. So I didn't even stream at that point because I didn't really have anything to stream, and I did League. And then basically at the end of 2016, when I moved to Prague for college, I got asked to run Prince of Persia at the first Pop Runs marathon because the guys from the community made a very small, it's just a humble marathon for the community. And I got asked to run Sense of Time and Warrior Within again, and I was like, okay, sure, I'll do it. And they kind of reignited the spark a little bit. It was a disaster, the runs, because it was so long at that point, but it was a lot of fun. I also got to know Matt, who I believe you had on the podcast. You sent me the episode to check out with him. It was really interesting. Like that pretty much sold it to me. Like when I saw you had Matthew here, I was like, I gotta go as well now.
Matt is just one of the most impressive, just in terms of collection runs. Shout out to Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's also really good at something I'm not, and that's like finding glitches and stuff. And I'm like really impressed by his ability in that regard. Anyway, so that was Pop Runs, and then again, I kind of just like disappeared to obscurity. I was playing a lot of CS:GO at that point because I didn't really know what to do. And personally in my life, I was not handling the responsibilities from like switching from high school to uni too well, so I just didn't really know what I was up to. And then things changed. Well, not with the responsibilities. That took a while still, but things changed because ESA Germany got announced. That was an event in April 2017. It's now known as SpeedCon. It still happens. It's in Potsdam, which is near Berlin, which from Prague that's like 4 to 5 hours, right? And I had never been at an on-site marathon before, even though I participated in many online marathons. And I was like, well, I gotta go. Like, I gotta meet the guys from the Prince of Persia community that were almost like a family to me, like super close friends. And I got to go there. I had like, I think I ran Sands of Time, Everything, and Mirror's Edge. And I spoke to some, really inspirational people that were trying to like push their content, and they were trying to basically do something with streaming and stuff like that. And I was like, hey, like, I really like speedrunning. I really like the speedrunning community, and I feel like I just want to do more things with it. And I guess it was around April 2017 when I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess I want to like improve the quality of the stream and try to stream a little bit more. And then, I bought the new mic and stuff like that, like the classics. And I guess I basically took it from there. I was looking for like new main games that I could play. And when I returned from ESA Germany, I played Mirror's Edge still for like 2 or 3 months. Then I played some Dishonored. I played Uncharted 1. I did like all kinds of runs, and then I got on to Last of Us, funnily enough. So that's a story in itself, because it's from Matma again, who ran it, and obviously is very proficient at both part 1 and 2. But there was you had your run at Shots Fired, so the marathon. Yeah, there was a Shots Fired marathon in like later 2017, and I was like, well, I need a shooter to participate, so what am I gonna learn? And I learned Last of Us just for a marathon. I actually ended up submitting like someone else's run, because I had never done the run. So I just submitted someone else's PB, and it got accepted. So shout outs to Shadex for letting me in.
Wow. Yeah, shout outs to Shadex, the original. So yeah, Shots Fired 1 through 6 were organized by Shadex, who is not too active anymore, but definitely started a powerful marathon series.
Absolutely. Still carries its legacy. I'm happy that Matt picked it up and that we can still have fun with it. So I learned Last of Us for that, and Last of Us, funnily enough, does have a pretty like dedicated community of viewers on Twitch.
Oh yeah,
that really like watching the game. So I ended up getting to like about I want to say 50, 60 average viewers on that, and so then I got more of the like community feeling that was gathering around me, and I was like, this is really cool, and I really like this, and I want to keep on improving the stream and see where I can go, but. I got into a place where Last of Us got really annoying to play, because you start the game off by like a 6-minute cutscene pretty much that you cannot skip. Then there's like 2 minutes of RNG. Then there's like 5 minutes of walking. And then you have the first fight when you're like 15, 16 minutes into the run, and you gotta get 3 headshots. And sometimes the game's not even gonna register a headshot when you like hit it point blank. And as soon as it happens, you just reset, right? So I was like, oh, this is driving me crazy. And a new semester started as well. And so I had to like flip my schedule, and I was like tired, and it was so annoying. I just didn't want to like do Last of Us anymore. So I was like, no, what am I going to do, right? And I was playing with the idea of, we're going to get into like the selection of Dark Souls a bit more when we talk about the game. But I was playing with the idea of doing that run, and I was just like, this is not working. Like, Last of Us is not working. And I learned Dark Souls, and it was bad. And I went from like, 60, 70 viewers to like 5 to 10 to maybe 15 if I was lucky. And that's when the hustle started with Dark Souls in late 2017, pretty much.
All right, we'll dig into that more. Let's get some takes now. I always like gathering takes to keep me warm in the winter. This is probably going to be the easy one. What's the favorite speedrun of the games you've done?
Yeah, I guess it has to be DS1, because I've been like doing it the most and for the longest time, and I didn't get burned out on it, which is pretty crazy after 3 years of playing it like a lot. Like I've probably played Dark Souls 1 more than anyone in the world for like 3 years straight now. So yeah.
All right, but then I have to flip it, which is to say, what is the least favorite speedrun that you've done?
I guess I'm gonna pull up my page actually, because there's been quite a few. I don't even have like some of the runs there.
It's funny how often this prompts people to pull up their speedrun.com page. It's always very entertaining to me.
Well, I guess my choice should have been rather obvious, but it's gonna be Prince of Persia 2 Thrones, because that game is a pile of crap. Like, speedrunning wise, it's really annoying because there's like bunch of stuff that can crash the game. It's an hour-long game, so it's much longer than the 80% categories in the previous two games. And at the same time, there's just so many different like memes that they changed the run a little bit. Because even though in Prince of Persia I used the same, like in 80% categories, use the same zipping technique in all three of those Sans Trilogy games. In Two Thrones, there's just little things, little changes here to weapons there, like a weapon throw is different and things like that really make it super annoying. And I just, yeah, that's especially after my experience last ESA, so that was ESA Summer 19, I had submitted Prince of Persia 2 Thrones because you could submit 5 games, right? And I submitted 4, and I was like, I might as well submit the 5th one. So I submitted 2 Thrones, and I was like, guys, if you want to see suffering and pain, and you do not have enough Prince of Persia games, because there were like other people from the community who submitted, then accept this. And in the end, Two Thrones was the only game from the Prince of Persia series that got in, and I was like, oh no. And then, being the classic cata that I am, I basically didn't derust anything, and then I had to derust like 2 days at the event before the run, and I spent 12 hours on the game each day, basically derusting from not having played the game for about 2.5 years. And it just kind of reminded me why I had not played the game for so long. And even though the run itself ended up going all right, yeah, that's the one game that I can for sure say I'd never go back to.
Wow, that's a history. You know, that's those 5th games. Like I feel like both ESA and GDQ will let you do 5 games. And I don't know what it is about picking that 5th game. It's just so haunted. I wasn't even going to submit Just Cause 3 to GDQ this year, and then I couldn't decide on a 5th game. And one of my buddies was like, "Oh, throw Just Cause 3 in there; it'll be fine." And now here we are, right?
Congrats on that, by the way. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I noticed when watching the footage, I have not played Dark Souls myself, so I don't know if this is necessarily true. But it seemed like you were doing. I know the Prince of Persia run. So in prepping for this, I had watched the Prince of Persia run from Time Capsule, and then I had also watched your all bosses current relief done quick run for Dark Souls. And the thing I noticed, certainly the Prince of Persia one, you mentioned explicitly that you're using controller for reasons having to do with buffering inputs. Mm-hmm. And then with Dark Souls, were you also using controller? Because I saw controller inputs on the screen, but not having played Dark Souls, I wasn't sure if that was a static thing or if the game's actually dynamic.
Well, actually, so I need to clarify here, probably. So in Prince of Persia, like most people will usually use the controller because the game just works better on it, simply because of like the 4 directions on the keyboard just limit you a lot, right?
Okay.
I actually use mouse and keyboard for most of that run, but in the bow section where I mentioned the controller, I use the controller to get through it, because with the analog stick it's much easier.
Right.
But that's like mostly for the 80% category, because when you zip, you have to use the mouse to scroll the mouse wheel, and I hate like switching from controller to the mouse and then back, so I just played on mouse and keyboard. And on top of that, I had always like been more of a mouse and keyboard guy when I told you about like Call of Duty and League and stuff.
Right.
So it's funny that in Dark Souls, the controller is like the number one way to control the game. And I ended up being basically like primarily a controller player, because I play primarily Dark Souls now. So in Dark Souls, you will use the controller 99% of the time. There can be sections where being able to face directly straight by pressing W, for example, will be useful. Or there are sections of the run where, if you remember the death cams, or where the camera is from the top-down view and you do the skips, in that section, it's also a bit more intuitive to use the keyboard, because the controls are a little bit more intuitive, as I said. So that's how you control those games, usually.
Interesting. So the reason I brought all this up was because I wanted to ask if you had some. I wasn't sure if you would have controller hot takes, but it sounds like, because of the time that you've spent certainly playing Dark Souls on controller, I was curious if you had preferences, favorite and least favorite controllers.
Well, I absolutely do because, like I said, I used to like I spent so much time on the PS2, so I'm like pretty familiar with console gaming as well. Um, my favorite controller is probably this one. It's the PlayStation 4 controller. I think it just suits me the best. I like the weight of it because compared to the PS3 controller, the PS3 controller is a little bit like cramped up, and it's a bit too light. While this one's just I don't know. It's just to me, it's perfect because not only am I used to this kind of a shape because I've always played on the PlayStation, but if I'm to showcase how I often play in Dark Souls, I double claw or a single claw, right?
Okay.
Because there's a sprint button is circle or B, so you're basically designed to like sprint with the claw here and then move the analog stick, the camera here. But sometimes I also need to press the D-pads. So I will double claw like this. And on the PS4 control, it's very easy to do compared to something like an Xbox.
Yeah, I got to make a note for listeners right here. If you're listening to this on like Spotify or iTunes, Kata just did a very good visual demonstration. So you'll have to go find my YouTube page so that you can see what he just did.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just because of that though, but because of this podcast is just great. Or so it seems so far.
We'll wait for the surprise twist later.
When it comes to the least favorite controller, I mean, I haven't played on like that many different ones. I obviously used the Xbox controllers. I used a GameCube controller. I've used SNES controllers, and I've used the N64 controller. And I want to say the N64 is like probably my least favorite, simply because it's like so confusing. Like there's 3 handles there. Yeah. There's a stick in the middle. I have no idea what to do because I never played on it. So when I was playing some Mario at ESA and I was asked like, do you want an N64 or GameCube? I was like, GameCube, all the way GameCube. So I would say N64 is the one that I'm least familiar with. But I wouldn't say it's bad. Okay. I would just say it's like something that I would not pick. If I were to pick one controller for the rest of my life, then N64 would not be that.
No, that's very fair. So we're on the subject of controllers. We're on the subject of pressing buttons a lot. Something that I think I noticed while watching your Corona Relief Done quick run was that I think you are someone who uses compression gloves. It looked like that, I think. And so I wanted to ask you, maybe you can, if you want to, you can go into some history, but just sort of what your takes are on preventative measures when it comes to gaming, both, working with your hands, but also, of course, being sedentary and things like that.
Well, I've become a pretty big advocate of healthy lifestyle in general. That was in 2018 where I don't know, I basically just decided to like try to do like more fitness stuff and live like healthy, and it's basically like changed my life in a way that it's even hard to describe. But when it comes to, so I care about my hands as well, and I think everyone that uses a controller should, because in general, like the way you hold the controller is not very natural for the hands, and obviously as a speedrunner you're gonna end up doing like 2-hour sessions of practice into like 6-hour sessions of runs or something like that. So I think stretching your hands is really important. I think something like contrast baths is something that I've done myself in the past, and it's helped me relieve some of the pain that I used to have. So that is, if you don't know, you basically put your hands under hot water for like a certain period of time, for example, 90 seconds, and then you put it under really cold water for like 45 seconds. And that really helps out basically get the blood going and have the veins like spread out a little bit. And that's pretty much what I do and what I would recommend if you're feeling some kind of a pain. Now, the story behind these gloves is actually very different. I usually don't suffer from pain. I feel like the one time that I was suffering from pain, it was mostly like a mental issue, because I was just not playing well, and it was like frustrating me to the point that I feel like my body was, this is just a theory, by the way, but I think my body was just trying to tell me that something is wrong, that something is happening that my mind is not enjoying, and it was showcasing it through the pain in my hands, right? Because I basically, since I got to a better place when it comes to like speedrunning and my results and just mentality in general, like I haven't really had any issues with my hands since then. So the reason for these gloves is actually different because I have two issues when I get on a good run, right? First one is my hands will get cold, which sucks because then like they can be slower and it's just not a pleasant feeling. So these gloves keep them warmer. Not perfect, but it works much better. And the main issue was that my hands will get sweaty at the same time, and that is really bad because the control is gonna start slipping out of my hands. The grip is not gonna be good, and especially like if I'm, if my fingertip gets very slippery and I have to do some precise movements on the analog stick, it's gonna be really hard. So I basically started in like especially the old bosses runs where I have the time to put them on. Because I don't want to have them like the entire duration until I get a run going, because that strains your hands as well, because it's extra, basically extra resistance, especially when claw gripping. That's not very pleasant. So I basically fixed two issues at once with using these gloves, where it keeps my hands warmer and it also prevents the sweat from really hindering like my grip or anything like that. So that's basically why I use these gloves. And if you're having similar issues to mine, like I can recommend trying out something like that. These are completely normal, just fingerless gloves that you would wear to the gym. It's nothing special. I don't think you really need anything special to, fulfill these goals that I had in mind.
Right,
and
for the issues you were dealing with. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I've never tried that for controller. I certainly living healthy generally is very good. I've gotten back into weightlifting again. I'm a big fan of fingerless gloves for that. And it makes me wonder about it too, because what you said as well about hands. Like everyone thinks of sweaty hands, right? I feel like sweaty hands is a problem people think of a lot, but cold hands really does impact your effectiveness. When you're trying to do something manually. Obviously we're talking about video gaming, but music, I don't know if you do any music stuff, but certainly for me, I do like piano and things like that. And like, I can tell you that I've played piano in a lot of different states, and cold is the worst one, like there's,
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely far and away. Let's go to a topical question here. I'm curious. We had a recent event in speedrunning, which was the acquisition of speedrun.com by a company called Elo. And a lot of the initial takes on that, I feel like, have gone in two directions. One, speedrun.com had grown beyond the capacity of Pack and the staff to maintain it, and the performance was suffering as a result. And so having a company come in would help improve performance. But you also had a lot of people who were concerned, and some of them cited the company's other sites like DotaBuff, saying that this would lead inevitably to vital features being paywalled. And I was curious if you had a take. Dark Souls does use speedrun.com for its leaderboards, as far as I can tell. And so I was just curious if you personally, or the Dark Souls community, not that you would be the final word for the whole community, but just if there was anything that you had to say about this news event.
So this was really definitely an interesting turn of events. To be kind of expected, as you pointed out, with how many issues the site was running into, and being just run on volunteers with this kind of traffic is a little bit problematic for sure. But if you go to, for example, speedsouls.com and you get to the front page and you click on the leaderboards, we have our own like version of the leaderboards that we have on the site. But the thing is, we pull the API from speedrun.com. And as it is right now, as it stands, that's free. So I guess the big discussion that we had like in the staff in Speed Souls was that like what's going to happen if speedrun.com basically makes their API behind the paywall, puts it behind the paywall. So that was the one concern that we had. And obviously we could deal with it because we had that was back before I really was part of the community. But the leaderboards were done purely on Speed Souls, pretty much. The speedrun.com leaderboards were there, but they were really secondary. Like people usually submitted mostly to Speed Souls. So I think we could deal with just our own leaderboards. But in my personal opinion, I think it would be a real shame if something like that occurred, because speedrun.com has become such a hub for speedrunning, all things speedrun, that the thing with DotaBuff and whatever other sites they have is that if those sites die, the games like Dota will still be there, right? Like it will still exist. The community will still be there. But speedrunning doesn't really have any other central hub. Like you obviously have the individual discords for like all kinds of communities, or you have like, you know, I know Halo had their own sites. I know Zelda has their own sites. We have our own site, our own wiki. But basically, speedrun.com as a central unit serves the entire community this way, and I think it would be a real shame, and it would be a real issue, I think, if that website died, or if it became, you know, like a pay-to-use website, pretty much. Because if you look at the other previous format that we had, if you look at something like SDA, which worked for a long time, or even Speedruns Live, which was, you know, it's still is a site that actually generates even some income for the hosting of the site, which is pretty strange to me considering that website is pretty much dead. But what I'm trying to say is that these sites didn't work as well as speedrun.com, and I think it would be pretty hard to get someone to like start such a huge hub again and like get all the leaderboards over and stuff like that. So I sure hope that, you know, Elo will know what they're doing. I saw that they were hiring like full-time staff on the website, which could be great news because there's a lot of functionalities that have been promised, never delivered, or functionalities that we are missing. But I think just time will tell in the end. And I hope that they understand the speedrunning community and they realize that this is not only about profits, and that this website is really important to us.
Yeah, no, I agree that, you know, whatever it is, you know, it's become an important resource, especially for games that aren't big enough to, you know, to merit having the dedicated community that builds their own website. You know, I can definitely think of, you know, lots of, you know, games that I'm involved with where, you know, there's only a half dozen runners, people come and go, and that's totally okay. And something like speedrun.com facilitates that relationship where it wouldn't really be able to exist if we just had Twitch and Discord. You know, that it wouldn't be quite the same thing. I do want to mention, I usually try not to talk about chat during the podcast proper, but someone in chat did mention something that I was going to mention, which is that EasyScape did an interview with, I think their name is Alice Lewis, who is the product manager for speedrun.com that works for Elo. I'll try and link that interview in the podcast description, but I encourage people to look it up otherwise. It's about 20 minutes long. And it does EasyScape didn't ask, are you going to paywall anything? But EasyScape did ask, would things like, you know, people are concerned about the API, and the product manager does explicitly acknowledge that people building tools that use that API is a pressing concern. Like they know that we care about the API because we have tools built on that. So hopefully that has meaning. Yeah, there we go. Kat, I just put the link into the chat there. All right, one last sort of general question here. I'm gonna give you an option of one of two ways to answer the question, which is either, do you have a mission statement in speedrunning, or do you feel like you have a specific role in speedrunning? And when I say role, I mean like glitch hunter, grind monkey, etc., etc. So mission statement or role, pick your poison.
I mean, I guess when I started with Prince of Persia, it was a really turbulent time because zipping was just found at that time. So it was like every single day there was a huge discovery. And I guess I took it upon myself to like try to get good at the game, to kind of put all those discoveries together and like make a run for the community that would showcase the potential of the speed game, like all the work that was done by all the guys. Like I found some stuff as well, but I wasn't really part of like the super major things that were discovered, like the, you know, time saves that save like 8 minutes off of a 2-hour game. So I basically tried to take it upon myself to grind it down as much as I could. And on top of that, I'm a really competitive person, even with myself. So I like always try to just get that really, really, really good run. And if there were mistakes, I was not happy. And I think it kind of just goes hand in hand with the competitiveness that I've gained, either through online gaming or like my father is a pretty competitive person as well. So it could be a trait I got from him. But essentially what I do in speedrunning usually is I play a lot and I practice a lot and I do a lot of runs and I get the records. So I'm like usually the person that's like at the end of the chain whose run will be viewed on the leaderboards. But I mean, I'm sure people have mentioned this already, but speedrunning is such a community-driven effort that, as you put it, like my role, so to speak, would be the grind monkey. I am the person that grinds a lot. And if I discover anything, especially these days, it's like, you know, small setups. Like I don't discover like huge things. I just finesse the things that I already discovered. Like this could be done a little bit better. And I figured out a method that can be a little bit more consistent. Or I love going into fights in Dark Souls and I just look for new strats, like a new way to punish an attack or something like that. And I guess that's basically what I do in terms of like discovering things. But at the same time, some of the super advanced strats, and there are not that many of them, but some of the strats that I use, like no one's really on the level where they would pick them up as well. So no one like bothers studying them. So in the end, I just find like a bunch of stuff and it's really only for me. And I would love to be able to like find more discoveries that other people could use that would make the game faster for everyone. And like people would be like, wow, this is so cool. But I've just never in general been very good at finding glitches. Like I have found stuff here and there. I have routed a lot of El Matador, which is a funny meme game that we routed with Harvard and some other people. And like I did find like major tech in that game, but overall, I'm just I'm not really that person that would get into the game's code or that would look at something and try to analyze things. Like I just do runs, and like if someone finds something, then I'll be on that, you know, trying to figure out a setup or something, but I'm not the first one that's going to bring out the big discoveries like ever, pretty much.
No, I mean, that's a fair way to look at it. I mean, if your focus is on doing runs, you know, then you're going to do runs. And also that means too, and it is important that actually taking that big theory crafting or that big exploit and, you know, making it save time, right? Because that's I feel like when people discover something new, they wonder how much time does it save? And it's kind of hard to know until you really truly incorporate it into a run. And you know, and having the person who's put a lot of time into the game is really what allows you to discover that answer. You know, I don't think without the experience and knowledge from playing the game a lot, you can ever really know how much time something saves you.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you're making, because especially with my like recent 90% grind, I just you know, no one really knew like how long the category could go, and I just took it upon myself to see how low I can go in the short period of time, and then I saw that the limits were even further than we had all thought, and I was like, okay, well, gotta grind it out, and that's what I did. Yeah, pretty much.
Only one way to find out. You gotta do it. You just gotta push it. Well, let's talk a little bit about you and Dark Souls. Now, I mentioned specifically the one that I really focused in on was the Corona Relief Done quick run, the all bosses run. First off, I know we covered a lot when it came to you getting into gaming, and you covered you getting into speedrunning. Had you played Dark Souls a lot before coming to it as a speedrun?
Well, I played it a little bit. I never finished the game. I picked it up. I don't even remember like when that was, but I played it for a bit. I played for like maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, something like that. And then I don't even remember the reason. I just wasn't enjoying it, and I was done. And I never launched it again, basically, until the 2017 crisis with Last of Us, where I was one day. This is a pretty funny story how. And why I really like the speedrunning community and how much of an impact it can have on a person's life. I was done with my Last of Us stream, and I was like, that was a really good stream, and I really want to rate someone, and no one was live, right? So I was like, heck, let's go to speedrunocom, speaking of which, and I just looked through the streams, you know, something that had similar viewership to mine, and that was a Dying Light 2 Dying Light speedrun. And I was like, well, I had never seen that, so I'm gonna rate this guy. And that guy turns out to be a Wolfie 87, who also ran. Well, he doesn't run as much anymore, but he was running Dark Souls 1 at one point. And I basically already played with the idea of starting Dark Souls, because when I was choosing a new main game, I was looking for like 3 things, I suppose. I was looking for something that would challenge myself, where like it would be a difficult game and I could play it and improve in it for like a long time. second, I was looking for a game that had a community behind it, because in Last of Us, I wasn't completely alone, but pretty much. It's not like we had a Discord or anything. Like, it was pretty much just me doing my own thing. So I wanted something that had a community behind it, where we could share these strats, and there could be the people who find strategies that I can use then, and I can help out with. And the third was obviously also like the concern for viewership on Twitch. I was like, I also want a game that people like to watch. And I was like, well, Dark Souls seems like a hard speed game. It's very different than anything I had done, so it could be a good challenge for myself. And it has a community, it has a viewership on Twitch. And because I rated Wolfie this randomly, I started talking to him about it. I was thinking about picking it up, and he was like, well, you know, if you need anything, you can hit me up or whatever. And he introduced me to some other community members like Mr. Brood or Master 876. So those are like the first people I got to know in the Dark Souls community. And I was like, at that point, I was like, all right, let's do it. I had never finished the game, and I just went on the wiki. Like, there was a getting started page, which was complete crap. And it led me to like an outdated route that no one ever ran at that point anymore. And I still I got into that old route, and, you know, I really enjoyed it. Like, it was rough. The beginnings were rough, obviously, when you play a game that you haven't even finished casually. And you're like, I'm pretty much like a huge exception. There are other people, but I don't believe anyone's been like playing the game for as long as me without just being a huge Dark Souls fan beforehand, right? Like, not many people will go and be like, oh, I will pick up a fun speed game. Oh, what about Dark Souls? Like, not many people do that. So that's basically how it was with my first playthrough. I just never finished it, and people obviously have a great laugh when there's like some casual questions and I don't actually know the answer to them. Chat and teach me, and they always enjoy it. They always enjoy schooling me on casual Dark Souls stuff that I have no clue about.
So obviously your first go around Dark Souls was pretty quiet, and then you came back to it looking for a game to get into streaming and speedrunning. But you haven't then said like, okay, I've speedrun it a lot, now I'm gonna do some of this casual. You've really just kept with it as a speedrun game.
Pretty much, yeah, because like playing it casually is not really fun anymore. It's like too slow, you know, just running around and killing one enemy by one enemy is like it's just boring. I don't really enjoy that. I did some randomizers. I also ran like 100% at one point, where one of the objectives is to pick up all the permanent items. So I got to know like all the areas, and I got to know like where the items are. But funnily enough, okay, so this is fun as well. In 100%, in order to not clutter your inventory, there's an inventory limit in Dark Souls, and that's a leftover from Demon Souls. And I might actually talk about that later if you get into some of the glitch stuff. But when you pick up an item, when you are at that max weight low, which you're not supposed to get, it's just a leftover mechanic, but we can reach it. You basically pick it up, so it counts that you picked it up, but you immediately drop it. So you use that to not clutter your inventory in the 100% run, where you have to pick up all the items. Now, it only does that with like the items that have a weight, right? So that's like armor or weapons, and stuff like rings or consumables, souls and stuff like that. Those don't have a weight, so you still pick them up. So I know pretty much where like every soul, every ring is in the game, and I know where every item is in the game, but I don't know which item is which. Like, I don't know what armor is where. I don't know what weapon is where. So sometimes I'm like, you know, people are asking me like, what's your favorite weapon? Dude, I don't know. Like, you have no idea. So it's a pretty fun thing, and it's very specific to me, I would say. But I've tried some randomizers as well to like be able to explore the game a little bit more, and I still want to do more of those, because I think that's a great way to learn more about the game without having to play it completely casually. But I just really enjoy being able to do the thing that I do always, the thing that I'm comfortable with, and it mainly allows me to interact with chat a lot. Like, I always interact with chat a lot, and speedrunning, you know, a thing that you're familiar with is perfect for that, because a lot of the time, like, I don't even have to watch the screen. I can just look at chat and still play in a solid way. So yeah, that's why I enjoy it so much.
Well, talking about the run itself, you already kind of foreshadowed that I might ask a question like this. Do you have a favorite bit of tech that you would want to talk about? Or even, you know, if you want to brag about something that you have found or helped make more consistent, this would be a good opportunity as well.
Well, for me, it's really just been like small setups and small little things like, I don't know, using a different animation for a dupe or something like that. But I guess one thing that's really fun, and I don't know if I should get into it because it's a little bit like complex, but I'll try to do my best. So it's called equip slot manipulation, and there's a part in the run that you watched where I tried to do my best to explain it as well, and it's the thing that I do at the blacksmith, and I'm basically generating a ring out of a different item. And I think that's super cool. So there's a way to basically equip items of one type. So in this case, it is a consumable into items slots of another type. So I'm going to equip a consumable into my ring slot. And this is actually a combination of two different glitches. So the first one is quantity storage, where what I can do is I can store a quantity. So I will look at arrows. I will prompt arrows to drop them, and that will give me the quantity option. How many do I want to drop? So I will hover over 999 because that's the max, and the game's going to store that upper value. Then through some shenanigans, I can basically store a prompt. I will get stuck in an action, and then I'm going to use an item, but that item has a confirmation prompt. And funnily enough, if I don't stop moving, like that prompt will not appear. So I'm going to talk to the blacksmith as I'm moving around. And then what happens is in the menu, when I'm talking to the merchant, the confirmation box appears, right? So then the game is in like a very confused state. And essentially, if I go to an item and I press purchase, I'm going to purchase the quantity that I stored. So what I do is I purchase a pike. Okay, that's a weapon. And I don't know why I said that, but I purchase a pike. And I only purchased one, but the game thinks the quantity is 999. But in my inventory slot, it's just one. And nothing is really special about the pike, like the damage and everything is fine, except, and this is coming a lot from the fact that Demon Souls was, a huge basis for Dark Souls 1. In Demon Souls, arrows had weight. So the weight was calculated in the game by weight of one item plus, multiplied by quantity. And they kept this formula to Dark Souls 1 as well. So when I purchased that pike and the game thinks I have it 999 times, it's one pike, which is 10 weight units, times 999. So I end up with like almost 10,000 weight units in my inventory, and that's the limit. Okay, so that's the first part. That's the Demon Souls leftover limit. But in Demon Souls, it's a normal mechanic, right? Demon Souls Remake is coming out, so this is like kind of like relevant information now as well. In Demon Souls, you play around the weight limits in terms of like you have to store your items to like a storage and stuff like that. And there's a ring of Herculean strength in Demon Souls, and that ring, when you equip it, it increases the inventory limit when it comes to weight. And funnily enough, if I get to 10,000 weight units in Dark Souls 1, which I do through the pikes, and then I try to unequip my ring in the left ring slot, the game will give me a leftover dialogue where in Demon Souls, if you're... so let's say the normal limit is 40. The ring puts you to 60. You are at 50, and you try to unequip the ring. The game will tell you, you cannot do that because you would be overburdened, right? And this prompt somehow is still in Dark Souls 1, but it's super glitched out. So you basically, when you try to unequip the ring, when you're cramped at the inventory limit, what the game does is it shows you a glitched dialogue, and it just says like dialogue, which is super funny. But the best part about it is that once you click through that, you get basically a glitched menu where if you click on something, you're going to equip it. Okay, and you don't know where you're going to equip it, because what you need to do beforehand is essentially get into a state where you cannot open any equip slots. So that's, for example, if you're falling or if you're attacking, the game doesn't allow you to menu, right? Because like you could attack and then unequip the weapon, and that would be weird. Like what would happen? So for some reason, I don't know how Flex, we called it flexing because of it. I don't know how he figured this out, like what kind of substances he was on, but he basically figured out that the item slots are somehow connected. So when you get into the state, and for example, you click on the helmet slot, and then you try to unequip your ring, and you get that glitched out menu, and you can equip anything pretty much from your inventory. Because you clicked on the helmet slot, it's gonna be the other ring slot, right? It's like connected, if that makes sense. So then I can select the consumable and equip it into my ring slots. Now, what is that good for? Well, that is very simple. That's the simple part. When you equip an item in Dark Souls, the only thing that is checked is the ID number, not the type. So when I equip a consumable of an ID 108 into a ring slot, it will check the ID and it will see that it's in a ring slot. And if there's a ring of that ID, that item will act as such a ring. And I think this is such an amazing glitch, because not only does it save a lot of time that you don't have to go and pick up the red tearstone ring, which is a super strong ring that basically doubles or triples your damage if you're low on health. That's why you're gonna see runners at low health all the time and like getting hit on purpose to set up this range for the boss fights. Not only does it save a lot of time, it also introduced like so many different memes to the game where you can like equip all kinds of items to all kinds of slots, and it creates so many funny looking effects. Like you can equip 3 helmets, you can make your character invisible, you can change your hair slot while you're in the like middle of the game, because there's a hidden hair slot that you can also influence. And what I think it demonstrates the best, and I think the fact that it took me like 5 minutes to explain this, or try to, is the amount of complexity in the Dark Souls 1 menuing and how amazing it is in just abusing it and doing all kinds of like wild and silly stuff. There's so many things that you can do with Dark Souls menuing that's not even like useful in speedrunning, because it doesn't like save time anywhere. But it is just so cool to do. That's why I love doing like glitch exhibitions and marathons and stuff like that, because there's so many different things that you can do with the menus.
No, I think hearing your explanation of this brings to mind 2 things that I like to say a lot. One of them is that games with features can be exploited, and Dark Souls, being a complex action RPG with all menus and action, allows this to happen. I think the other thing I would say too, after hearing this, is that it really highlights the utility of having an understanding of how code behaves when it comes to not only finding but also understanding glitches, because the secret sauce there, as you said, is that the way it checks, it doesn't say like, is it a ring? It says, okay, you put this thing in this slot, let me check the number. Oh, it must be this ring, and you go from there. And that's just, understanding what it checks for is so important. It reminds me a lot, my time, for example, of like GTA speedrunning, where you have, flags for on mission or off mission and how you can manipulate that and do stuff. And I think it's very much the same thing. It isn't like, it doesn't ask, are you on this mission? It asks, are you on a mission? And then, everything unfurls from there. That's really, really neat. I wanted to ask, you've done a bunch of different Dark Souls runs, different categories, and I see that you're even working on Remastered, which I feel like people have takes, very spicy takes about Remastered. I wanted to ask you if you had a favorite category, and expanding that to include any of the Remastered categories. I don't know if you want to include a take Remastered here. You're welcome to.
So I'm just gonna like quickly point out that the differences between like PTD and Remaster, so PTD being the original version, Prepare to Die edition, they're very similar games, but there are some things that are fixed about the menuing. So a lot of the complexity is kind of lost in Dark Souls Remaster. There's some other stuff that doesn't exist in PTD because they introduced some quality of life features and they can be abused. But basically with the Remaster, you end up with kind of watered down categories of PTD that are just much simpler and like a lot easier to run. So Remaster is a fantastic game to get into as a new runner, I would say. But for a long-term fun and like just, excitement and longevity of your speed game, like PTD is definitely the choice. So PTD for me is absolutely like the favorite one, even though I'm doing Remaster at the moment, which funnily enough, it's not too bad yet, but I'm only 500 attempts in, and I'm like 1,500, I'm probably going to be saying something else. But I would say and this could be Stockholm syndrome, like speaking, right? Because I've done Dark Souls all bosses the most, but I would say that's probably my favorite category because it's a good length. It's just over an hour long. It has a very clear goal in mind. Like there are 26 bosses in the game, kill all of them, and get to credits, right? Like you get to credits after you kill the final boss. And so it's very like easily defined. The other categories are a bit too short, I think. And there's no really good alternative. One category I really like also is 100%. But the problem with that category is that it's RTA almost 4 hours long. So you end up with big issues like trying to stream it, right? Like imagine that you have 6 hours to stream and you are 3 hours into the stream, you reset, and then you don't, like, what are you going to do those 3 hours, right? Like you're forced to either do something else or do no reset or something like that. So when I ran Hundo, it was a lot of fun, and I want to get back to it eventually when I have more time. But I think all bosses is just my favorite category for the reasons outlined.
Cool. Well, you already made your way to answering what would have been my last general Dark Souls question, which is your future plans. Now, so you are, as you said, we're working on Remastered right now. You're certainly interested in Hundo. Is there anything else you'd want to add? If people were like, oh, okay, how much more Dark Souls could Kata do? What would your answer be for them?
Well, my answer would be like unlimited Dark Souls because the variety in Dark Souls 1, especially thanks to the move swap glitch, where you can basically like transfer part of one weapon's moveset to another, which is the bread and butter in the original Dark Souls. You end up with so many different categories and routes and so many variations that there's always something to run, right? Like we have the classic categories, the major ones as we call them. Even though I don't think that's a well, it does make sense. The major categories, that's the any percent no wrong warp, any percent force quit. So there's 3 any% categories. There's all bosses. Those are like the 4 major ones. And besides that, you also have like SL1 categories, which is you don't level at all. So you use completely different weapons than in the major categories. Or there's stuff like all achievements. There's obviously 100%. There's like all bosses no DLC. There's Orturius of the Abyss, which is essentially any percent, but you do the DLC bosses on top of that. So there's so much variety that I don't think I've like ever run out of content. Unless I get bored of the game in general, I can just like go from one category to another and just keep on going. So when it comes to future plans, there's actually, I don't know if you noticed, but because it was announced like 2 days ago that there's going to be a Break the Record live event for Dark Souls Remaster.
Oh, yeah. So no, I did notice that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like one of the reasons why I'm doing Remaster, but I was also just planning on to doing it like in general, and I thought it was a good time. So Remaster is probably going to be happening for a while still, but at the same time, I also got to go back to PTD. There's going to be the Speed Souls Charity Marathon next weekend. I have some PTD runs there. So I'll be switching
that'll
back
be on
and
the Speed Souls own channel, right? Twitch channel? Is that
Speed Souls Twitch channel?
Okay.
That is correct. Yeah, so I'll be switching back and forth, I suppose. And I guess the next category I really like want to try to push as much as possible is going to be any percent no wrong warp, because my PB is from like early 2019, so it's been almost 2 years, and the route has changed a lot. A lot of time is to be saved there from my PB, so that's probably what I'll be tackling next. Cool.
Well, a lot to look forward to there. You know, I also wanted to check in, as I mentioned, on Prince of Persia. I think it was specifically... it was Warrior Within, right? That was the time capsule one. I should have written this down. Yeah, and
no,
so
you're correct, yeah.
You mentioned that was before streaming and everything on Twitch, that was really the first game that you had sat down and done runs for. Now, obviously, Dark Souls is your major focus right now, but I did want to check in. Is there anything that you kind of wanted to brag about with Prince of Persia? You know, in terms of, because I feel like this is compared to Dark Souls, it sounds like pop runs, as you called it, is maybe, would you say I don't know if it's a smaller community. I'm saying that right now, but did you have any involvement with coming up with stuff in this run that you had an opportunity to do here where you maybe didn't in Dark Souls?
Well, in Prince of Persia, because I was always focused on the any percent categories mainly, where you use the zipping glitch primarily, it wasn't really about finding new tech, but it was about like once you can zip through walls. The limitation is where are the low triggers for next areas, and how far can you go with one zip? Like how many low triggers can you go through as you're spazzing out all around the map? So what I did for Prince of Persia was I figured out a lot of zips, a lot of like trigger positions and stuff like that. That was basically what I was focused on. And when I was running Prince of Persia, I was like pushing these 20% categories pretty much alone, because I was far ahead of like anyone else that tried, and no one really wanted to play it for too long, because it's, like I said, it's the same technique over and over, so it can get really grindy and boring. So when Prince of Persia was like what I was focused on, I usually held the recce's in the 20% categories. But now the way I look at it, like I definitely don't want to run those games actively again, because first of all, the 20% categories are not in a good place in terms of like the run length and RNG and stuff. And on top of that, it's just, I don't know, like Dark Souls is too much fun. And I'm super happy that I have this like plethora of games that I can showcase at marathons, because I love showcasing things at marathons. So I have like a ton of games that I can submit, and there's usually going to be something picked at least, and that's always exciting. But I don't really have plans on like doing any other game like full time, except if ever Elden Ring decides to come out, which From Software recently tweeted about it. They were like, "Hey guys, we are making this game. Good thing you didn't forget." If that ever comes out, that's probably a game that I will tackle a little bit more if it's good. But besides that, I don't really have anything on my table.
If FromSoft makes a new Armored Core, would you run it? Just asking for no reason,
I mean, if a new Armored Core came out, then I mean, at this point, I pretty much have to play like the new FromSoft games. So no promises, but who knows?
Okay, all right, that's fair. That's fair. I can dream. I can believe. All right, well, let's start to wind this down. One thing I'd like to do as we start to get towards the end of the podcast is to carry forth a question from my previous guest to my next guest. And Illumina had this question for you, which was, what is the hardest speedrun trick that you've done?
So I'm going to need like 2 seconds to think about this, even though I probably have a candidate. Well, if I wanted a funny answer, so I'll give you 2 answers, okay? The first one is the meme answer, which is connected to a story again, because I like telling stories because it brings context, and I think that's important. So at ESA 2018 summer, they decided to do that SM64 relay race, right?
Yes.
When you have 70 star, so you have 2 teams of 70 people, and they race each other, right? Everyone does 1 star. So halfway through ESA, first of all, I completely lost my voice. I got sick because, of course, ES AIDS, it's like every time. And so I was like, I got to the hotel because I lived in an Airbnb, and I was basically sipping on my tea, and I was talking to the lads, and I was like, "So you guys got some stars or what?" And they were like, "Yeah, I got a star." And did you practice? Yeah, I practiced. So I was like, "Cool. Do you have any?" And I was like, "Nah." So I was sitting in the crowds waiting for the relay to start because I had tons of friends participating in it. I was sitting next to my mates, sipping on that tea, and then they're like, "We're missing star number 11, Catalystz." And I'm like, "What? Huh?" So I come up and I'm like, "What are you talking about? I never played Mario 64 in my life. How are you missing me?" So I don't know where the problem occurred. I don't think I ever signed up. Like, I don't remember it. But the thing is, no one even like contacted me to give me opportunity to practice my star or anything like that. So I was like, well, that's cool. So I went to the team captain. That was Fuzzy. And I was like, "Hey, mate, I never played the game before. I wasn't supposed to be here. And I am actually like gonna have to do a star." And he was like, "No." I was like, "Well, can you help me out with that?" And he just put on his headphones and turned away because it was like chaos, everything. So I was like, "Well, that's great, Captain." Went back to the line, and I was like, "Well, this is gonna be problematic." Fortunately, I'm not like a socially anxious person, so I can imagine how someone would like freak out. But I was like, "Okay, well, how do we salvage this?" So I looked up the run from the year before where they did it like without a race. I was like, okay, what star am I gonna do? Like maybe I'll just get an easy star. I look it up and it's the freaking like flying star where you have to fly around. And I'm like, oh no, because I remember Fingers to Hand did that in 2017 and he had so much trouble with that. And I was like, well, that's not gonna be easy. And then of course I get there, I'm like, hey, I never played this, okay. And I spent about 8 minutes flying around. And about 8 minutes in, Fuzzy is like, you can land on the tower in the middle, right? And I was like, what? So you don't have to do the entire like fly through round in one go. You can do half of it, sit down, then get the cap, and then fly again, right? And I was like, ooh. So immediately when he told me, I got it like first try after that, but meme enough, like, basically a level that took me 8 minutes to complete. I would say that was maybe the hardest. But if I were to give a serious answer, I think Dark Souls in general is mechanically not as intense. A lot of the skill that comes from Dark Souls, I would say, is the knowledge about how to act, being consistent, because Dark Souls is a little bit strange in a sense where every single enemy can influence the run. So obviously, like bad boss patterns will lose a lot of time, and good boss patterns, bad enemy patterns when you're just running around are gonna lose. You're gonna have to do an extra roll here, there, but over the course of the run, it ends up being like 3-4 seconds, right? So basically, everything that you encounter in Dark Souls is a little bit of RNG, and every enemy has like multiple patterns they can operate in. So I think the real skill in Dark Souls is to have the knowledge how to react to everything and just make those correct decisions one after another. Because one little mistake can cost the entire run as you die or skip doesn't work. But the opposite of that is Mirror's Edge, where like there's no RNG. Virtually no RNG, there's one fight. And it's all skill-based. And I would say Mirror's Edge had some of the most skill-intense tricks that I've ever done. Because I was trying to grind out some segmented strats as well for like the segmented run that was published. And some of the stuff that you can do in there is like borderline insane because you have to keep track of your angles. You have to kick at the right time when you're wall running. You have to obviously scroll the mouse wheel to jump properly and not like boost off of the wall. So you basically just need to get like a frame perfect input. But if you scroll too much, you get like an input after that. So there's so many things to keep track of and chaining the kick glitches. I would say Mirror's Edge and some of the tricks there was the hardest that I've encountered in speedrunning.
So that means now that I do need from you a question for my next guest, who is a speedrunner. And the question can be whatever one. It doesn't have to be speedrunning, gaming related, but knowing the audience in mind, what's the question that I can hand off to the next guest?
So, do you? Is it a secret so far? Who's
Well, so I haven't announced it yet. I will let you know, but only after you give me the question.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Well, then I was gonna do the other way around. Yeah, damn it, that's hard. So speedrunning question. Okay. Something interesting. What was the first task speedrun that you've seen, and did it like impress you? Like, was it very different than the regular run? I guess that would be my question.
Okay.
But the main part is really like, what was the first task?
Yeah. So this I always like to spoil it just to the guest though in the DM. So that will be the next OverBoost there. Are you familiar with that person?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you. I'll just give you a little more information there. So maybe that'll jog your memory if you've seen someone doing that around. So anyway.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I see it on speedrun.com.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So now I'm gonna ask this question. I think you already answered this one, but I always like to ask it here. Future games that you're excited to play. I think you already said Elden Ring, but any others that you'd want to mention?
I guess I'm like many people looking forward to Cyberpunk being released. If it ends up being released, got delayed recently again, but I think it's December 10 now, so
that's
perfect
right, yeah.
time for holidays. I feel like that game should be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to playing that. That's definitely something that I want to try because I haven't had much time. Like I bought a new PC this year in February, and especially over the summer, I haven't played anything but Dark Souls. Like I've made Dark Souls content, or I've played Dark Souls, or I'm like studying, or I'm in the gym. So that's like the 4 things that I do, and I just haven't had time to like get this beast running a little bit. So I'm looking forward to that RTX in Cyberpunk and seeing what this computer can do for real.
Where should people be looking for you? What is the content to go out and get?
So you can find me on Twitch at Catalystz. You can find me on YouTube, Catalystz as well. I make educational Dark Souls speedrunning content, I suppose, that tries to bring the games to the more casual audience because there's a lot of Dark Souls fans. And then obviously you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Catalystz_.
And of course, links to all of those will be in the YouTube description, or if you're listening Spotify, iTunes, it'll be in the podcast description. So be sure to check all of that out. Kata, thank you so much for giving me all this time.
Well, I really appreciate you having me, and it was a great time, and I can only wish you luck with the future episodes.
Thank you. Now, we do need one more thing from you before the podcast ends. I'm going to use a cheesy catchphrase like "Let's boost on out of here," and when I say that, when I finish saying that, I need you to give me your best rocket engine noise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got it?
I was like,
Okay.
All right, yeah, I'm down.
Okay.
All right, let's go.
Folks, thank you so much for listening. Let's boost on out of here.
Whee-shoo!